Um, but he wanders into this very dark, it's like this haunted house. Everybody in that house is walking in a dream. They're like frozen ghosts walking in the dream. The inside of the house, yes, it is gorgeous as you said, but it is overgrown with like the grotesqueries of a combination of like Art Deco and
Yes.
Victorian
Era.
era. And the outside is so overgrown with weeds. I mean, like just walking up to his apartment at the beginning of the film over the garage when he first gets to the house, it's overgrown with weeds. Everything is disgusting. There's rats living in the swimming pool,
Yes.
like Miss Havisham. She's been
Hmm.
frozen in time. Even though she's been frozen in time, time has continued to go on.
Yes.
And things have been continuously decaying around her, which I feel like is a nice segue into a talk about older women or Hollywood and its treat.
Yes.
Well,
And
I
its
mean, not
treatment of
like
older
old.
women.
Yes,
Yeah.
Hollywood and its treatment of older women.
It is sad. Like, when I first watched this film many years ago, like, I thought, like, oh, like, she's classic bad guy. I, like, didn't see her sympathetically at all. Because, like, I didn't know, being that young, like, oh, like, that's a thing that happens. So, like, looking back
Mm,
at it when I, rewatched it again right before we started taking notes for this podcast, I was
right.
like, I was struck by how sad I was for her. And
Mm,
yes, she's the, like, villain of the piece, but she's also a victim of it. Like,
oh, for
she
sure.
was originally, like, they even, like, DeMille talks about how she was an amazing, nice, great person to work with
Mm,
when she was younger, and, like, the system destroyed her. And it's kind of, and who can really blame her for being childish and being kind of silly, because that's the, like, who wants to sit down and die? Like, you're told you're in your 50s now, you're dead. You can't, like, they were
yeah.
expected to just disappear. Like,
Uh-huh.
men at least had a little bit more of a shelf life and could do more, and even today that's still the case. But, like, women, when you get older, especially in acting, it is very hard to, like, get a career back, even if it wasn't for, like, the talkies, like, if there wasn't an issue just with the change in, like, kinds of films. Just
Mm,
the fact that she is now too old to be anything
yeah.
is just sad. So, like, it's hard to see, like, who would want to sit there and be like, yep, it's my time in society, I'm out, I'm going to be a recluse and nobody gets to see me and I'm dead to the world, bye. Like, it's wild. I would not
Right.
expect that of anybody.
Well, I feel like that culture breeded that because you even look at people like Doris Day. There came a time where she would not be allowed to seen by any cameras or anybody else outside of her own little circle. She would call people and she'd have interviews, but Doris Day would never be seen. And that was that kind of culture of the 1950s. She was this very bright, beautiful, bubbly young woman, but she came to a point where she was like, no, not showing my face in public anymore. And you can look at even at like a play like The Philadelphia Story written by Philip Barry. It talks so much about in the play of like Tracy is turning 25, and in Hollywood at that time, according to many of the bigwigs, 25 was the expiration date for many women. And that's one reason that Joan Crawford had her molars removed, was because studio heads at MGM told her, if you want to keep working on past 25, you're going to have to do something drastic. So she had her molars removed to create these wonderful cheekbones, these hollowed out cheeks, which affected her later on because eventually it was like without her molars, her teeth weren't really attached to anything. There was nothing holding them in her mouth. Just anyway,
Horrifying.
yeah, it's horrifying. And then that started to be a problem in the 1950s because the 30s and the 40s, they had men and women that were relatively the same age. Starting in the 1950s, like Joan Crawford was thrown out of her contract. Well, not thrown out, but she left her contract at Warner Brothers because she wasn't making as much money. Same thing happened to Katharine Hepburn and MGM, Betty Davis. Lucille Ball left MGM somewhat because of that issue, but she went on to greater heights, as we all know. So in the 50s, you have all of these beautiful young actresses such as Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, Marilyn Monroe, that are playing these beautiful, young, bright, bouncy women, but they're playing too much older men. such as Audrey Hepburn to Gary Cooper in Love in the Afternoon, which is another Billy Wilder film. You have a very young Sid Charisse playing to an older Fred Astaire in The Bandwagon. You have a 22-year-old Debbie Reynolds playing to a 50-year-old Dick Powell in the comedy Susan Slept Here. So it's like, as all of these women are being filtered out of Hollywood in the studio system, you have all of these younger women coming up, but it's all of these very strange, like girls in their early 20s with men in their late 40s, early 50s. And it's because they did not foster that balance. It's like men could stay beautiful and suave into their 50s and 60s and bachelors, where women were like, they hit a certain age, it's like, nope,
You're
never
dead.
mind, you're out of
That's
here.
it. Yeah. It's wild to see men are allowed to age gracefully and women aren't allowed to at all. So like that's why I think it's kind of like empathetic that I'm like, yeah, of course she's not going to act her age. Like nobody would like her. So like they're like, no, no,
Right.
no. So like her primary sin is not acting her age in an age when they wouldn't want her. Like if she did,
Right.
nobody would want her. So she thinks that's
Exactly.
the one thing she can do to make people still want her.
Mhm.
And it does work for about 2 minutes in the film, and then everybody else goes back to what they're doing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's a very sad thing. It's good. I mean, we have many beautiful older female stars now, such as Meryl Streep and Helen Mirren, and even Maggie Smith and Dame Judi Dench. But even then, as older women, they're not able to play ingenues anymore. They're playing character parts.
You are only cast as a character. Like there, it's a very fun thing. We actually discussed this back, in college. But
Mhm.
like that, if you're a woman, like if you're a desirable woman film role, or you're a character actress, and you're much more successful as you get older at being a character actress, like, and you're not as successful when you're younger. But even nowadays, if you're a romantic interest type, you've got a really good couple of years, and then when you get older, you're no longer going to be seen as desirable. You're going to have to either be a character actress or quit.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's
So
a wild thing to think about. Like
I
even now,
know.
it's still an issue. Like you'll have occasional actors or actresses that are allowed to be old and still be desired, but for the most part, it's not. It's the exception, not the norm.
Exactly. Well, and the same thing happened in, old Hollywood. It's like all of the older women were played by character actresses such as Marjorie Main, Lucille Watson, Mary Boland, Billy Burke, but they were never considered, or even beforehand in the film industry, they weren't considered as like beautiful young ingenues. They could only play one part. Just a few of my thoughts that I wrote down. Gloria Swanson's character possesses the pursuit of vanity or past glory, versus William Holden and Nancy Olson in the pursuit of making a good story through great art. Like you
Yes.
said, Gloria is only interested in what it can bring to her,
Yes.
instead of what she can bring to the art. And just like we said, it also reveals studio system obsession with youth and beauty and mistreatment of writers. That's another thing that I was going to talk about.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett were both writers in Hollywood. Um, they understood the cynicism that they wrote into Joe Gillis's character. It was almost a reflection of them, because he was a writer as well that was constantly rejected. Also, I believe in Berlin in the 1920s, Billy Wilder had worked as a gigolo for several different older women to make money, so he kind of understood.
That part of the life, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, the relationship with older women. Well, that was fun, Mallory. Do you have any other points?
It's sad, and that's but also hilariously campy. I I
Yes,
I if nothing else, I hope that at least one person hears this and makes a funny meme about all her fun lines and even his fun lines. Everybody's got good lines. He
I
drags her to
know.
filth half the time.
Well, I tell you, if we don't have 500 listeners within the first week, I am burning this to the ground. We're never going to do it again.
Well, this has been our first and last podcast.
No, no. But anybody who listens to it, rate, review, subscribe. We love you forever for listening to us. What I wanted to talk about before we left was, always keep in mind, if you like classic films, if you love listening to this podcast, go show a little love to like different boutique labels, or even like big Hollywood studios that are doing restorations on these classic films, so we can see them today in all of their brilliant cinematic glory. Things such as Warner Archive, and George Felsenstein is the head of that, and he he single-handedly, really, when he was working at MGM in the early days of like VHS, he was one of the top executives that was like, how about we put like old MGM films on VHS, and we take these important films and we put them on VHS with different extras. So George Felsenstein's a very important character with Warner Archive. There's Kino Lorber, which does restorations of different films from different studios, puts them on Blu-ray. And Blu-ray may not be your thing, but like Mallory said, they put some of these films like on HBO Max. There's a TCM channel on HBO Max that you can go watch classic films. There's Amazon Prime. Netflix has some stuff sometimes, but like also like Criterion Collection. They lease these different films out from different studios and they do beautiful restorations. So we don't have to watch these, nasty cut up prints from almost 100 years ago. So anyway, if you like what you heard today and you would like to request a film that we can cover in the future, feel free to write into the HollywoodBabylonians@gmail.com. Write in and tell us why you love the movie, why you think we should cover it. We might read your letter on the air. Wouldn't that be exciting? Or if you hear a fact today that you're like, I'm not exactly sure if that's completely true or if there's some further history you would like to add to our discussion, feel free to write in about that too. We might read your letter on the air as well. We are on YouTube as the Hollywood Babylonians. We are on Instagram as the Hollywood Babylonians, and we'll be on TikTok as the Hollywood Babylonians. So go follow us there if you like what you hear today. Rate, review, and subscribe. We should be on all major platforms for this podcast. And with that, be sure to cinematically scintillate and go out and watch a new classic movie. Until next time, this is
Mallory
and Ben Burke. Thank you for listening to the Hollywood Babylonians. You have been listening to the Hollywood Babylonians. The Hollywood Babylonians is produced, edited, and written by Ben Burke and co-hosted by Mallory Harwell. Research by Ben Burke and Mallory Harwell. Artwork by Ben Burke and Jamie Lee. Sources include Close Up on Sunset Boulevard by Sam Staggs, Wikipedia, and You Must Remember This podcast, hosted by Karina Longworth. If you liked what you heard today, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and be sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at The Hollywood Babylonians for more Hollywood Babylonians content. Tune in next week as we explore another classic film out of the golden age of Hollywood and the history behind it. Thank you for listening, and have a good night.